Great photography equipment is a nice thing to have, but no amount of expensive equipment is going to turn a poorly composed photo into a great image.
In this video, we'll show you how you can use your camera to compose a better image. It doesn't matter whether you're shooting with your phone, a point-and-shoot camera, or a DSLR camera. Using these guidelines will help you make a better image. Composing an image means arranging elements within the frame in a way that captures the subject and communicates your ideas. Composing an image allows you to guide the viewer's eye through the frame so that it draws attention to the most important elements.
Good composition can make a masterpiece out of a somewhat dull topic. On the other hand, poor composition can ruin a photograph of the most interesting or exciting action.
So let's take a look at some common rules of photo composition. While these are often called rules, they're more like guidelines or tools that you can use to compose a better picture.
That's right. Composition is like tools. When working at home, you wouldn't use all of your tools for every job. You wouldn't use a screwdriver for a job that required a hammer. In the same way, we don't use all of our composition rules or techniques on every photo. You'll choose the technique that works best for the image you're trying to create.
The first of these rules is to have a center of interest. The center of interest is the main focal point in your photo, and if you don't have one, there's probably not a reason to take the photo in the first place.
Take this image, for example, of a band marching away from you. The photographer has chosen to draw your attention to the taller band member as he marches away. In other shots, a center of interest might mean getting closer or focusing attention, such as this shot of a football player and a young fan.
When in doubt, look to the eyes of the people you are photographing. They will often pull you right into the photo.
Whether you are shooting a single person as your subject or many people, there should always be one center of interest. In the photo on the left, the intensity of the band member's eyes draws you in. In the photo on the right, you are drawn to the one yawning graduate amongst many of his classmates.
The next rule is the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is based on breaking the image into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, so that you have a total of 9 parts. The rule of thirds creates a grid that you can imagine through your viewfinder.
These 4 lines are useful for placing elements within your photo. The rule of thirds also identifies 4 hotspots where those lines intersect. Placing your center of interest at one of those hotspots creates a much more pleasing image.
The theory is that if you place points of interest along these lines or at the intersection points of those lines, the viewer will be able to interact with the photo more naturally.
Center of interest does not mean center of frame. Moving your center of interest to one of the hotspots allows for your photo to have motion and space. Your viewer will be able to look at your center of interest and read through the photo, rather than being stuck in the middle.
Let's look at these photos. In the first shot, your eye is drawn to the band member doing a flip in the upper right hotspot on the image. In the second image, the eyes of both subjects sit on the upper grid line and fall in the hotspots of the image. And again, on this image, the subject's face is positioned so it appears on the upper right hotspot on the image.
The next rule for us to look at is framing. When using framing, we place objects within the frame in the foreground or the background to surround our center of interest. This will draw the viewer's attention into our center of interest and also gives us a sense of dimension.
The world is full of objects that make the perfect natural frames. Objects such as trees or windows or doorways help isolate the subject from the outside world. The resulting image is much more focused, and the frame that sits outside the edge of the image really draws the viewer in to the center of interest.
Take this image as a classic example of framing. The lumber within the photo helps to draw our attention to the center of interest, the girl that is working on the homecoming float. In this image, the book in the foreground and the books in the background are used to frame our subject as our center of interest. They also serve to give us a sense of space. In this third image, the pieces of the wrecked car that draw our attention to the person in the background also help to tell the story of the photo.
Next, we will consider the concept of leading lines. When using this tool, look for curves or lines in the image that can lead your viewer to the center of interest. Look for leading lines in unusual places, as this will create a more dynamic photograph.
Let's take a look at these images as examples of leading lines. In this image, the line of students leading through to the teacher draws the viewer to look all the way through the image. The shadows in this image also draw the viewer's attention to the student. This image shows a great use of framing by placing the subject within the inflatable. The different colors of lines that lead through the image draw you to the face of the runner. In this image, the photographer uses the curved lines of the instrument to draw us into the musician's face.
A similar composition tool is patterns and repetition. Patterns and repetition draw the viewer into the photo, but a break in the pattern really makes things interesting.
In this picture, the pattern of empty bleachers creates a very pleasing visual, but it's the image of the sunbather breaking the pattern that really draws the viewer in. In this image, the pattern of the chain link fence is broken by the freshman students that are escaping from a closed campus. Sometimes, the pattern that you're looking for is in the people themselves rather than in other objects within the photo.
The last rule we'll cover is to vary your camera angle. Good photographers move around. They approach a subject from above, below, from one side, or from the other. The photo would not have been interesting at all if the photographer had not positioned herself on the other side of the glass and slightly below the subject.
Creative camera angles can be especially effective when shooting sports. Don't be afraid to get dirty. A photographer has to be prepared to lay down on the ground or climb up on things in order to get great shots.
Academics are often the most boring part of the yearbook because the photographs show the tops of heads and students sitting at desks. Portray your school's learning and teaching processes in a new way by trying out creative camera angles. So there you have it, 6 powerful tools for your photography toolkit. Have a center of interest.
Structure your images with the rule of thirds.
Find ways to use framing.
Look for leading lines and curves.
Capture pattern and repetition.
And always use creative camera angles. No matter what kind of camera you have, you can use these 6 tools to create captivating and powerful images.